Today's show is sponsored by Earth Friendly Products. For over 40 years, Earth Friendly Products brought you the greenest home products for all your family needs. Learn more at ecos.com. That's ecos.com. Now, let's get to the show.
What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Hello and welcome back to another broadcast of Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and with me now is world-renowned psychic Eddie Connor.
Hi, everybody. Well, here on the show, you know Tony and I love spiritual mysteries. We also enjoy asking great questions. Questions like, how do we find out about our ancient past? Are we alone in the universe? Are there other interdimensional beings out there? And is it possible, Tony, that aliens and angels are somehow connected? These are just a few of our topics today on Truth Be Told.
We are thrilled to have renowned clairvoyant, historian, and symbologist Tricia McCannon on the show. As a teacher trained in many ancient streams of knowledge, she is joining us today to share her research and her heartfelt information about all things mysterious.
And we love the mysteriousness of it all. Her clairvoyant gifts emerged at an early age, allowing her to discourse directly with her angels, masters, and spirit guides. These profoundly enlightening encounters then propelled her to a lifelong search for the truth, as she sought to reconcile the various paths of history, science, spirituality, and ancient knowledge. Let's find out more right now, and please welcome clairvoyant Tricia McCannon.
Hi, Tricia.
Hi, Tony. Hi, Eddie. How are you guys tonight?
We're good. We're
are.
Not as bubbly as you are.
I know. I'm like, give us some of that, what you've been drinking.
I know.
Well, you know, it's very contagious spirit. I've been working on my new book that's probably going to be out in a year with Inner Traditions, and all that angelic energy has kind of been, flooding in. So I've been in the flow all week.
Well, that's what we love to hear, because you're a great writer. And I want to find out for our listeners and viewers, what was your first book? What was the first book that you wrote?
It was called Dialogues with the Angel. And it's really actually a lovely book that's so easy to read. People tell me that they order it and they stay up all night, or they call in sick to work the next day so they can finish it. So it's a personal story about how, as a child, I grew up across a great forest, and there were divas and elementals in the forest. And I think most people can't see them. So because I could see them, they went and told the overlighting angelic presence of that forest. And that being came and began to teach me when I was 8 years old. And he spoke about the vast chain of being and how spirit comes down through the dimensions and the planes to, the human kingdom and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and the mineral kingdom. And then how the angels are all connected to this, and how the ETs are connected to it, and ghosts and the fairies. And, so that was the beginning, really, of my spiritual education with what I would call, these higher dimensional beings.
And where did you grow up at? Where were you living when you were around 8 years old and had this experience?
Well, I live in Atlanta now, and I grew up probably, 30 minutes south of Atlanta. And this was, in the 60s and the 70s and so forth. And then I went off to school at Florida State University and graduated from there in Florida. And that was actually where I met the Viragi Masters. It was my sophomore year in college, and I'd had a rough year or two of a lot of soul searching about a lot of things about suffering and the nature of reality and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was in a place of deep prayer and crisis, and these great masters appeared. And there were about 5 of them with physical bodies, but the others were on the inner planes, and they explained that they had been watching me for a long time. They had put me through a series of very arduous spiritual tests. And because I had chosen love and compassion and forgiveness, they had found me worthy to take under the wing and teach. So I became initiated with them when I was 19 years old. And they taught about the vast dimensions and the planes of being, and they taught about how a human person like any of us or anybody listening to this broadcast can, while still living in a physical body, learn how to shift their consciousness and travel into these inner planes. You don't have to take somebody's word for it. You could experience it for yourself. And I was like, well, hot dog, that is my kind of path. Because I felt like there were, when, my dad was Baptist, my mother was Methodist, I was confirmed Episcopalian, and I love actually the Episcopalian because it's like Catholic light. It's got all the beauty and the ceremony, but none of the guilt, which is good. And so, I found myself, asking questions like a lot of us, where there were certain things that resonated in spirituality and religion, and there were other things that were like, well, I don't think this is right. And, when you're born and raised in the South, well, I wasn't born here, but raised in the South, there's the hellfire and damnation. And I could never figure out how Jesus, the God of love and peace and universality and forgiveness, was related to, the wicked ruler, and you're going to hell, and you're going to be punished. And God is a vengeful God. It, just did not make sense to me. It's like something's wrong with this picture. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
I'm from
Eddie's from North Carolina. I'm from Kansas. So,
and, we're the first one to do the HB2 or whatever it is where you can't go into a bathroom and all of this other stuff. And it's very closed-minded and conservative in North Carolina. But the nature in the southeastern United States truly stands apart from the rest of the country, in my personal opinion. Because
I think that we've got some great states, all for different reasons.
Oh, yeah.
California is incredibly awesome. It's like all that energy from the continent of Lemuria in the Pacific comes over, and they get all these wonderful, amazing ideas, and then they vibe them with the Hawaiians out to the rest of the world in consciousness. And then you've got the waters coming in from New York, and those people are also neat in a totally different way. I mean, New Yorkers they're survivors. But they're pretty cool, actually. So you've got the whole East Coast, which has a different in energy. It's more intellectual energy. But all of these states are growing. I mean, North Carolina's got some very cool people in it. There are amazing people in Ohio, in Kentucky, in Indiana, states you would not think so. Of course, Florida, and surprisingly, I have people call me even from Texas and Alabama and Louisiana. I mean, there are conscious people everywhere, guys.
Yes.
Oh,
that's so true.
That's true.
And that's one of the great things about doing this work. I wanted, you were speaking about the states, Tricia. I want to ask you, have you ever heard of this practice or whatever it would be called, where they say certain parts of the country belong to a certain chakra? For example, and I don't know what they are. This is just an example. I'm paraphrasing. It would be like Los Angeles would be the heart chakra of the United States. New York would be the solar plexus. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have, and I think it definitely bears contemplating. And I also think that some of these capitals are in the process of changing because, if you kind of follow some of that Mayan, hidden serpentine kundalini energy, supposedly, and I can't verify this as a clairvoyant, but something about it kind of feels right. So I'd put it out there as a possibility. My sweet, lovely, very tuned-in friend Drunvalo wrote a book some years ago about this Mayan wisdom that talks about how roughly every 12,000 years, the serpentine energy moves. And that for a long time it was in Lemuria, then it moved to Atlantis, then when the flood, went to Egypt, it wound up going to the east, and now they're saying it sort of wound up in South America. So that being so, where the positions of the chakras are, like to me, Los Angeles is, I would say, the throat, or probably the throat, because it's communication, and it's connected with inspired vision. There's a lot of genius people, smart people out there in Hollywood, and that are contributing to trying to shift consciousness to some degree, in the movies and the entertainment industry. So Los Angeles is communication for me. Like New York is more will and power.
Yeah.
Or Washington's interesting because Washington has the possibility to really be a flowering heart energy, and that's why the Masons set it up with the sacred geometry. But I think, unfortunately, when you get a lot of people striving for power issues, it's hard on the heart.
Right.
With all of the paths that you've taken with history, science, spirituality, and even ancient knowledge, where we're at today in this time-space reality, which one or two stand out more than all of the other things you've ever learned that would help our audience today?
Oh, my gosh. Wow. What a question. I do not know if I could possibly do that one or two, but I'll try to just hit a few highlights. One of them is that I just want to say this to all of us Judeo-Christian people, not to mention those poor little Muslims out there, that we are not on opposite sides, that nobody's on an opposite side, and there are no opposite sides, that all of the rivers of wisdom ultimately flow to the same great river or sea and to the great cosmic ocean, but that most religions have an exoteric level and an esoteric. The exoteric is sort of about, just give them the basic, hey, give them those 10 commandments, that'll do it, and have them pay some money to us so we can continue to have jobs and we can create an organization. That's the exoteric. Simple and easy, sign me up and I'll go to heaven. The esoteric is the real path of initiation or illumination. And the Sufis, for example, in the Muslim path, the Kabbalists, the mystical Kabbalists in the Jewish path, the Gnostics and the Cathars, and even the Knights Templars that were really into some of the hidden wisdom knowledge of the Christians. And, so because I, like many of us, I've incarnated in many lives and many different paths, and I have a strong connection with Atlantis and with Egypt and with the Far East and with the great masters and with the angelic realms, but also with the ET realm.
Yeah.
I've been on board ships since I was a child, and the beings I've been on board with are very benevolent, they're kind, they're not doing any medical experiments, they're not, heartless, soulless, gray automatons, they're actually fully realized higher dimensional beings who know that the earth is going through this enormous transformation, that we are moving up into the fourth. And this would be the second thing I would say, is that the dimensions are layered like male, female, male, female, male, female, like that. So if you count from the bottom down, the earth being female, then, you go up in dimensions. It's the same thing with chakras. So this is a third-dimensional planet, so we've been stuck in the third dimension. And the issues of the third chakra are will and power. Fear, will, and power, and that's control. This is what we've been going through on this planet for, my God, thousands of years.
Right.
But if we move up as a spiral into the fourth, now the fourth on its way up, if the dark wanted to get a hold of it, would be doing things like bad dreams, vampires, keep people in the lower astral planes of pornography and drugs and bad, unhealthy foods and misalignments, which we all know is going on, that the dark forces are doing that. But the spiral is meant to take us up into the heart. It's meant to take us into the feminine vibration of the astral plane, which is why fairies and archaeological digs that have not been available to us and things like that we haven't really seen or known about since industrial society came in a couple hundred years ago, and we said, oh, all that's just hogwash and legends, and there were no gods, and there were no fairies, and there were no giants.
Right, which is true.
These are things I'm going to be talking about, at the, I have two events, coming up next weekend. There's the Conscious Life Expo in San Francisco, or San Mateo. And that's a wonderful, wonderful event that Kenny Kaufman puts on once a year, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's not to be missed. It's a great price, lots of speakers, and I'll be speaking there. I think I'm speaking on modern UFO sightings and ancient history and the evidence for them having been here like tens of thousands of years in the past. So, of course, I show lots of slides and images, and I don't think you'll probably find those on my website. because that's a separate presentation. And then I'll be speaking at Contact in the Desert on strange archaeology and the elves and the fairies and the divas, and also a program on angels and extraterrestrials. So I just got to speak to them earlier this week, and so they said, what do you want to talk about? So I happen to know what I'm speaking about.
Well, speaking of that, I'm going to ask you because, we throw out a lot of different things on the show, meaning fairies, aliens, angels, spirits. Interdimensional. Can you explain, first of all, a little bit of what they are? What are fairies compared to angels? Angels compared to interdimensional beings, or because we hear a lot of different types of beings in our lives and in our spirit lives, but sometimes we don't really know what they are.
And then the possibility also of the extraterrestrials in cahoots with the angels.
Yes.
Well, first off, those are great questions, guys, and they are definitely 3-hour questions.
Did the Cliff Notes Reader Digest? Is that what?
Oh my God! It's like, could you just tell me about the nature of the universe? And hey, 5 minutes or less.
And throw that in there too.
So great questions, guys. Okay, so the quick version of reality would be, and actually this is kind of what I've been writing this book about, although I touch on it in some of the other books. The second book, The Lost Years of Jesus, and the third book was Return of the Divine Sophia, which I'm sure we'll circle around to that.
Yes.
But what I've been writing on for this coming book, The Blueprint of the Soul, The Landscapes of Heaven, and the Angelic Destiny of Humankind. So that's the name of this new book. So that's a mouthful, but the simple version would be that the Creator, as best as we can even conceive of the Creator, breathes out. And this is what the ancients call the Day of God, and it was trillions of years. And this, maybe it was the Big Bang, but that breath out, the Huba, which is the breath, the life itself, the Holy Spirit, that goes out into the universe. It's the Shekinah, it's the sine wave, it's the feminine principle, and it carries the light of the divine masculine energy, the solar energy, out. And the worlds are created, the universes and the galaxies, and they're surrounded by these big cosmic eggs, and that's actually what the galaxies look like when you look at the red shift of the envelope around them. And so each one of these is an opportunity for a new evolution of consciousness. And so the one creates not only all these worlds and dimensions, but also the beings that populate it. And there are different conversations about that, but one conversation is basically there's only one being anywhere. That we're all in the body of God. Mm-hmm. And so everything we see around us, from the air we breathe and the food we eat and the people whose hands we shake and the clothes we wear, it's basically all part of the adamantine particles that make up the universe, which is the particles of love, the particles of the Divine Mother. So it's like the body of the Mother, and the Divine Father breathes through it, and the Holy Spirit, the Divine Daughter, goes out, and then the Divine Son comes to light the world. So these are not inanimate, just scientific things. These are actually divine intelligences or presences. And so it goes from the one to the many. And, it's subsets going down. So it has to do with consciousness, and it has to do with the vibration of, let us say, matter. So in the third dimension, we see each other because we're kind of all vibrating about the same. And the fairies and the nature spirits and the leprechauns and the brownies and all that, they're part of the expressions of the Devic kingdom. Yeah. And that's the tetralogical kingdom. There's 3 big kingdoms: the vegetation kingdom, the human kingdom, and the tetralogical kingdom. And there was a time when they were all in balance with each other. And then the humans started pulling away from the Devic kingdom, which is also, at the highest levels, the angelic kingdom. At the lower levels, it's the little elementals. And it moves all the way up to the things in between that take more, human form, like fairies,
right,
human with wings, and so all of those are part of the same kingdom. And they're part of, on one end, the evolution of the soul before we ever become human. And then on the backside, when you have these gigantic, archangelic energies that oversee, solar systems and go up from there, then you're either talking about beings that have never come down into human form. They've been up there God knows how many billions of years, or they've gone through the whole evolutionary cycle, become human, fallen down just like us, made a million mistakes just like us, suffered just like us, eventually awakened within the dream, become masters, and taken the wave up into the higher heavens, and they have been in service for so long that the way we see them or experience them is as these beings of such purity.
Wow.
That blew my mind right there.
I know. Well, mind blown 101.
Guys are so cute. I know your consciousnesses already knew all this stuff, or you could never even ask those questions.
Yeah. Well, I have an odd question. This is something that happened. I was dating this person. Two small stories in one, and then I want to ask you what happened, Tricia. So I'm going to ask you what happened. I'll tell you the story, then I'll ask the question. It's my best friend, he passed away in 1993. Before he passed away, I was like running errands in downtown in the city I lived in. Got a flat tire, called Tim, my best friend, and while I was waiting for Tim to get to me, I was standing near my car, and I felt somebody walked past me, but I felt a pull or tear. I don't know another way to say it. And I turned and looked, and I watched me with my backpack, which was in my car, with my backpack over both of my shoulders. I watched myself walk past me, cross the street, and then walk down the street and disappear.
Oh, yeah. So that was a parallel reality. So, who talks about this beautifully is my beloved late great friend, Dolores Cannon, who wrote a whole series of books called The Convoluted Universe. And in them, she discusses this very thing where there are all these, let's say, realities that are just a slight hair's different frequency from one another.
Yes.
So the ones that are closest to us, think of it like bubbles. We're surrounded by a bunch of other bubbles.
Yeah.
From time to time, the bubbles bump into one another. So there's a doppelganger, basically, of you and me and probably everyone listening to this conversation in most of, if not all of, those, slightly similar but slightly different realities. So occasionally, crazy though it might sound, it's like the bubbles bump into each other and kind of cross over for, it could be a few seconds, it could be a few minutes. I have had a friend, I remember years ago, when I was in college, I had a friend who told me this incredible story that when he was 9 years old, he was kneeling at his window looking outside in the daylight, and suddenly he saw this gigantic 100-foot giant stride across the landscape, stop and turn and look at him like the giant could see the house with the little boy in it.
Yeah.
In utter amazement. Both of them looked at each other like, what? You've got to be kidding. And then the giant strode off and disappeared. And the guy, my friend said, I wasn't crazy. I was totally fully awake. It was broad daylight. And so, I've looked for answers to these kinds of anomalies. And I certainly don't know everything, but, I am a clairvoyant. I've read for over 6,000 people around the world. I am initiated in many different ancient streams of knowledge and very much a student on the inner and outer planes. And this is why, I have a mystery school that for 10 years. And if people are interested, they can actually study online. The first 12 discourses you can actually order on my website. And they're, 100, 180 pages with lots of phenomenal knowledge and information on everything from the angelic kingdoms and the tree of life and the Native American twisted hair shamanic circles of how the elements are arranged. Fairies and divas are in there. The hermetics of Egypt have a very strong lineage from the Egyptian line. So, and of course I weave that together in explaining how it works with Christianity. And this is one of the things I tried to do in these last two books, Return of the Divine Sophia and Jesus, the explosive story of the 30 lost years of the ancient mystery religions, an incredibly long subtitle.
Yeah.
But worth every every mouthful of it.
Yeah.
Right. And Eddie, go ahead and give that website.
It's TriciaMcCannon.com.
And please check it out. There's so much there. It's not just one of those 1 or 2 pages. You could stay all day and learn so much from her website. And Tricia McCannon, actually, I think I saw you maybe about 4 or 5 years ago at Conscious Life Expo here in Los Angeles, and you did a workshop on lost ancient civilizations, I believe. And before we go to break, I want to ask you about that. And when we come back from your break, I want to talk about your book, Return of the Divine Sophia. But the ancient sites, ancient civilizations, when did you become, because you could have just done the clairvoyancy and talked about angels and fairies, and people would have been, magnetized with what you're talking about, but you also, are an expert with ancient civilizations and lost sites. So could you tell us how you got into doing your research on that?
Yeah, when I was in college, my senior year, my boyfriend had moved to another town to take a job because he was a year older. I had to find a place to live, and I was putting myself to college. And so I answered an ad to become a governess. And this is a strange story. And basically, it was an archaeologist who was very well known in Florida. I won't say who he was, but he also happened to be psychic. And he used to go out and scan sites, and he would clairvoyantly see villages or huts or whatever, and then he'd go try to find the evidence for it. Well, I loved this story, okay? He was gone maybe 90% of the time, which is why he needed a governess for his 8-year-old daughter, who, we were fast friends immediately. And so he was the first person I ever saw to do psychometry, where he held an object and could tell you information about it. And I was like, I want to do that. Absolutely. And so I thought, I wonder how I can do that. Well, at the same time, I was fascinated by archaeology and history. And I think because I'd had these experiences with beings like fairies and divas and angels and extraterrestrials, I also was interested in kind of finding out what the evidence was behind all that. So when I graduated from college, I took a job. I was a commercial photographer that had a 5,000 square foot studio in Atlanta for 25 years. But here in the beginning, when I first graduated, I took a job as a photographer for the Department of Archaeology for the state of Florida. So I got to go and shoot artifacts and digs.
Wow.
That would have been
cool.
great.
It was so cool. I loved it.
Yes.
I could have easily loved being an archaeologist. I don't think it pays very well, but
Right.
What a great profession,
Yeah, I've always wanted to go, just somebody that is well known and just kind of observe what they do, because I think it would be fascinating.
Well, and I want to know and go because I'm waiting for them to find some of the bones of those 100-foot giants and different things that I think we have found that nobody talks about.
Well, the Smithsonian has many of them.
Hello.
Yeah, well, I think that we all are on the same page about these things, the histories and mysteries, I like to think of them.
Yes, and we love it. And that's one thing I loved about you and doing the research that I did on you, that some of the stuff that you've worked with. And I want to know of the stuff that you've studied or and either been on site or either clairvoyant, what was one of your favorite sites or civilizations that you really enjoyed learning about?
And which was your scariest?
Ooh, scariest.
Gosh, well, I need to say every single one is wonderful. Every culture of the world has had its beautiful peaks and valleys.
Right.
And I love England. I've probably been there 30, 40 times. The land speaks to my blood. It's like my blood sings in the west part of England, around Glastonbury and Stonehenge and Cornwall and Bath and Bristol and, Shaftesbury, that whole area. And I've had a lot of magical, powerful experiences there. And I have priestess and goddess and druid friends over there that I've done ceremony with. So that's an amazing place, especially this place called Tintagel, it was Merlin's birthplace and Arthur's birthplace. And I remember years ago I was on a tour speaking. I do these sacred trips to different places, and I was with John Michel and another late great person. He was an extraordinary researcher who discovered the grids of the ley lines all over the Celtic Isles and eventually all over the world. Hamish Miller continued that work, and both of those men have left the planet now, but their contributions were great. And so I remember reading in the brochure when we were going that we were going to Merlin and Arthur's birthplace, and I thought, oh, right, I don't believe that, Well, my goodness, we got out there. That place is like going back in time 2,000 years. It was, on a top of a cliff with crashing waves and caves and extraordinary. And about 30, 40 miles out from it was this hidden place, the Lady of the Lakes place. And it's not called that. It's called St. Nectan's Glen. And you literally get out of your car and you walk about 45 minutes through this pristine forest where there's divas and fairies and angels everywhere. And you wind up at this waterfall that pours into this gigantic basin and it jumps through a hole. And if you climb up the side of the waterfall, there's actually a little, scones and tea place. Clotted cream and biscuits, up at the top with tea. The British are so great. So, of course, those people are, the keepers, the sacred, you can bet those were druids that were protecting that place. So I've been there 3 or 4 times, and anytime you take music, like a flute, you can have someone taking pictures before you start playing, and as you start playing, all the little fairies come around you, and they look like these incredible orbs, like 100 of them swarming you.
Yep.
It's extraordinary. So England has just got to be right there at the top of the list. I love England.
I have to say, when I was there about 10 years ago, I knew I had been there before because I just fell in love with the city. I felt at home, and I felt like there were so many familiar things that I've seen before when I walked through the city. So I fell in love with it, too.
Yeah, I've never been, but I know I'm supposed to go, and I know I'm supposed to go to Ireland.
Ireland, yes.
Ireland?
I've been to Ireland, and it's very magical. I think that people have been very economically challenged. People that are living out on the land. They've gone through a lot of hard centuries where they weren't getting along. The Catholics
Right.
and the Protestants, and thank goodness everybody's made friends again. But Ireland's lovely. And Scotland, it's cold, but it's lovely. And I wound up with the Loch Ness, to where Nessie was, and she'd just been sighted like 3 days before. So, come on, let's go find her.
I know.
I
would love. We have. That's one thing in 2 years we have not had anybody on about the Loch Ness.
And I've always believed in the Loch Ness and all of that stuff. I really believe that it's there.
And this is our first day we've really streamed to our Facebook stream. And Natalie Tomlinson says, "Talking about my home." She's one of our hosts, and she's also a psychic. So hello, Natalie. Thanks for listening. And Tricia, we're going to take just a quick break. We have to do our sponsors. But when we come back, I want to talk about your amazing book that's touched so many people's lives, Return of the Diva, Divine Sophia, Healing the Earth Through the Lost Wisdom Teachings of Jesus, Isis, and Mary Magdalene. So, but you can go to Tricia McCannon, McCannon.com and check out all her information from books to upcoming events. This is a wonderful lady and a great speaker and very admired. And so we're going to come back here in just a minute. This is Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I'm Tony Sweet.
I'm Eddie Connor.
And we'll be right back with more Tricia McCannon.
Thanks, Tricia.
United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, sets the standard for most food supplements and are used in over 95% of all vitamin and mineral supplements in the world. The problem is that these products have never appeared in any living tissue. They're created in laboratories and are not recognizable to the body's metabolism. Grown by Nature products are different because they use renatured ingredients, proprietary blends of essential vitamins and minerals, with cofactors of proteins, lipids, and complex carbohydrates. Over 50 studies have been conducted on renatured nutrients, and over 20 have been published in peer-reviewed journals proclaiming their superiority. As a result, Grown by Nature vitamins and supplements are now recognized as simply the best available. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 and order your Grown by Nature products today. We are what we eat, and since we are of nature, we should eat foods in their natural form. Only Grown by Nature offers a full line of renatured nutrients. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 because not all products are grown by nature, but they should be.
circular-shaped, unidentified objects have been reported.
The unidentified object moves slowly down the Pacific coast and disappears.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. I am Eddie Connor.
And I'm Tony Sweet.
And we have with us the extraordinary clairvoyant, historian, and symbologist, Tricia McCannon. You can learn more about her at triciamccannon.com. And also, she's going to be in Contact in the Desert this June. You don't want to miss her there. That's in Palm Springs, is that right? Or Joshua Tree?
It's Joshua Tree. And for those people that are listening, either live or on recording, please go to truthbetoldwebtv.com. You can win tickets to see Trish McCannon and Eddie and myself. Hopefully we'll be out there if Eddie's not going to be too hot. You have great, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be too hot, y'all.
Yeah, he said it might be too hot. George Norrie's going to be there. I think Eric Von Danigan, David Wilcox, many others. So please go and try to win those tickets.
And Tricia, aren't you also going to be at the Conscious Life Expo in San Francisco next weekend?
I am. That is a wonderful show. And actually, it's going to be in San Mateo.
San Mateo.
They moved it down to a very pretty center there in San Mateo. And the tickets are, I don't know, something crazy, like $45 for the weekend.
Oh, that's not bad at all. And you can go to newlivingexpo.com. That's the website you can go to.
Yeah, that's new as in N-E-W, not N-U-D-E.
Not nude, yes.
I know, because we got our accents. We get all
that's true.
full
that is true.
Full-clipped. I can't even say.
Well, Tricia, when I put on our website and on Facebook that you were going to be on the show, someone in the chat rooms actually commented and about the book of Divine Sophia, Return of the Divine Sophia. They said, "I love this book. I use this as a teaching material for our church."
Wow, I love that.
And so I want to know, when writing this, it sounded like you had your own divine interventions of influences in writing this book.
Channeling.
Yeah, so you must have been channeling. So could you tell us how you wrote this? Was it something that came to you in a dream or just started flowing out?
Well, gosh, again, another wonderful question. When I was about 27 years old, I wound up, I'd been studying with the Viragi masters. Of course, my background was Christian, so those were sort of the two paths I was integrating. And I was contacted in the dream state. I had a lucid dream, very lucid dream, that I had gone back to school for my master's degree, and I woke up and there was this extraterrestrial writing all over the wall. And I tried to remember the symbols, but I fell back asleep, and when I woke up again, I could only remember one, which was a circle with a dot at the center. And this is how the Sophia book actually starts. And I wound up going to the library to see if I could figure out what this symbol meant. And while I was there, the student assistant came and got me and said, "There's a phone call for you at the front desk." And I was like, "What?" Nobody even knows I'm here. How is that possible? So I answered the phone, and they said, "Is this Tricia McCannon?" And I said, I said, "This is Tricia McCannon." And they said, "We've called to tell you that your dreams are real."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "What?"
Wow.
I said, "Who is this?" And they said, "We're from the priestesses of Isis, and that's all we're permitted to tell you at this time." And then they hung up.
Oh, I love stuff like this.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
And then I woke up, and it was a dream within a dream. And, of course, I had no idea who the priestesses of Isis were. I mean, of course, like lots of people, I had loved Egypt and been pulled to it and been fascinated and felt like I would always go there. Another wonderful place I've gone and taken pilgrims. But I didn't know, what was this dream about? So 2 months later, I was in this shop called Illumina, and I was looking at this beautiful Egyptian statue, and the woman behind the counter said, "Are you interested in Egyptian things?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been dreaming of the priestesses of Isis." And she said, "Oh, tell me your dream." I said, "Well, I don't think you'll understand my dreams. I'm not sure I understand them." And she said, "Try me. I'm a high initiate of the priestesses of Isis." And this was to become my shaman teacher.
Oh, Lord.
I hear some laughing in the background.
You know, that's the first 5 pages of Return of the Divine Sophia. And the second chapter, I go to see her. And she lives in this incredible place. It's like a place where people have done worship for 10,000 years. It's a convergence of 2 blind springs or underground springs that create this enormous vortex of energy. And she was the priestess of the grove, and Jeremy was the priest. And he's like a Sasquatch man.
Oh, I
so
love this.
I found myself stepping into this whole other world where, I mean, her little cabin had 4 rooms, and the living room had nothing in it but 4 altars and a fireplace. And the altars were like to the Divine Mother, to Mary, to Sekhmet. There was this huge stained glass Sekhmet with the solar, sun over the cat's head, and it was buffalo skulls. And I was like, where am I? Oh my God, I've fallen into a crack between the worlds. I was like in an altered reality. And I spent the afternoon with her in this beautiful grove, and the land was talking to me, and the divine presences of the Divine Mother were speaking to me. And I knew by the time that day was over that my guides wanted me to study with her. But I was a scaredy cat. Because, I come out of this Judeo-Christian family. I mean, my older sister is a fundamentalist married to a preacher.
Oh, I'm sure that goes
You were
well.
still in the South, too, right?
Still in the South.
Bless your heart.
And, here I am, soul traveling with these masters from the Far East. They already think I'm strange. It's like, oh, my God, no, it's the goddess.
Wow.
So this began a journey. At the end of that day, I asked her for a promise, and that was that when I was ready to study, she would convene a circle. So she said, all right. 5 years passed. And so then there were certain things that happened that were so powerful, divinities that were coming to see me, and angelic presences, and gods and goddesses. And it was like, I have no idea how to make sense of all this. Shasta was the one person I knew that might know. So I finally went to see her and said, I'm ready. And that began a series of initiations into the Divine Mother energies, the Egyptian mysteries, the Celtic mysteries, and ultimately the Native American twisted hair tradition, which claimed to be the record keepers on the planet going back like 230,000 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is amazing. From the time of the bringing down of the original 12 or 13 crystal skulls that were part of the Galactic Library. So I found myself in the midst, after many years of study, of very, very mystical knowledge and experience. But of course, I was having my own direct experiences and being downloaded and taught all the time by these interdimensional beings too. So the Return of the Divine Sophia is about a very condensed version of the beginning of that journey, and how, of course, my father being a lawyer, me having such a strong research-oriented historical mind, I was like, well, how is this true? And so, like, for example, one of the things she had told me, which I did the research and found out was true, is that all mammals are created biologically female first, and that the existence of the male is because of the release of an additional androgen. So in other words, the goddess makes her companion, her beloved male companion that she wants to spend eternity with. So this whole story we've been told in the Bible is like, hey, there was Adam, then he got put to sleep, then out of his rib came Eve, and she's just a servant, and she's just supposed to serve him for the rest of his life, and, let's wear a veil and wear, and be mutilated as women because we're inferior.
Right.
It's like, what is wrong with this picture? It's like, I don't think so. And the same thing, Eve ate the apple. Not that Adam didn't eat it too, he ate it too. But Eve's to blame for all our troubles. So let's blame it on the poor woman,
Right.
So, it's been really, it was a twist when I realized that the actual biology is that everything is created feminine first. Because one of the things that I was experiencing, these beings who are my teachers, there was the Divine Mother and the Divine Father, and of course they call themselves something else. They call themselves actual names, and when I'd, enter their presence and say, who are you, it would be like the download of total grace, divine grace. So, beings a lot of times, they go very slow with us humans, because even when we like to think we're so advanced, the truth is we're we have such limited. Most of us don't spend enough time tuning in to the inner planes. Tuning into our souls, tuning into what we're meant to do and who we truly are as divine beings. We're so busy in the rat race of survival that sometimes we forget to turn inward.
And don't you find now, Tricia, that it's so much easier to tune in because it seems like the veil between worlds is thinner, or it's easier to access now than maybe it was when we were, growing up in the 60s and 70s?
Eddie, you are right on the money. I think that's a very accurate statement. And, it's an interesting thing, this vibrational shift. We know physically that the poles have shifted some 9 degrees towards Siberia. So, and that's, this information I'm telling you is probably 2 or 3 years old. So who knows, maybe it shifted a couple of more degrees. Mm-hmm. We also know that a lot of people have been having dizzy spells. And that's because we have magnets in our brain. And as the poles shift and move, we're electromagnetic beings. The Earth is electromagnetic, and so we get affected by those electromagnetic fields. Mm-hmm. And so it creates dizziness. It creates ringing in the ears, which is kind of like an opportunity to open to really the sound current, if you can use it that way. Have you had dizziness? Have either one of you guys had dizziness?
Oh, yeah.
And ringing in the ear, too.
I haven't had the ringing, but I've had dizziness, yes.
Well, the dizziness is a big one. And then there are other things. Some people suddenly wake up in the middle of the night, like, 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock for no discernible reason.
That is me, 4 to 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning. I don't know why I keep waking up every morning.
Well, this is what I would say. Sit up in bed, put your back against the wall or the headboard, and, meditate. Even if you go back to sleep after 10 or 12 minutes, clearly your guides have awoken you for a reason. Yes. So instead of using the conscious mental body to keep yourself awake, go into the subconscious that takes you to the higher conscious or superconscious state. And if you will do that, then your guides, it's like opening the door and saying, come on in, consciously connecting with the light. And then you can sink back into sleep, and your guides will be able to do more work on you.
Well, we're running out of time, and I want to ask a question before we talk about what you're going to be doing at the Contact in the Desert real quick. But we talked about the poles are shifting. When that finally happens and the complete does the 180, I want to know not just the physical effects of the Earth, but what is it mentally, spiritually going to do to us human beings?
Well, first, we don't know exactly what is going to happen. I think it's important to say.
Right.
Do know, I've had visions, and I've also seen the science. It does appear that we have a shift. It could be 90 degrees, it could be 30 degrees, it could be 10 degrees, it could be 180 degrees. We don't know what it's going to be. It could be incremental, which is what it's been. Right. And, of course, we have earthquakes here and there, and a few 100,000 people die at a time. Mm-hmm. But better than, like the Great Flood, where we lost 95% of the people on the planet.
True.
So it could be gentle. I think that the Galactic Council is extremely interested in not having everything wiped away. So I think that they're very committed to trying to help us to make incremental shifts. And this is what the crop circles are about. They're, two things. They're kind of like holding or creating the movement of nodal points, but they're also encoding the intelligence of water. And since this planet's 3/4 water, it's helping. But we have a lot going on. Basically what it very well could look like, which doesn't sound logical, but I'm sure there's a way for it science-wise to be logical. When you hear about these points, the Earth changes spin. Right now we're going clockwise. But there are documents that the sun rose in the west during the last age of Atlantis. So it goes back and forth, the yin and the yang. Yep. And it has to do with the sine wave as we move up and down the galactic equator. Mm-hmm. So when we when Atlantis went down 11,500 years ago, we were dropping below the galactic equator, and it was a big wipeout. So now we're coming up to where about 450 years ago, during the time of the Renaissance, we started hitting the edge of that sine wave movement going up to align with the galactic equator. And there are people who say it takes 1,000 years to go through it. Some say 1,500 years to go through it. Depends on where you think the edge is. So when will the shift happen? Well, anything could happen. It could be another 500 years. It could be another 1,000 years. Or it could be incremental. Or it could be next week when the super volcano in Yellowstone goes.
That'd be scary.
God.
So we don't know. So we have to live not out of fear. We really have to live out of remembering we're immortal beings. We're down here to bring as much light as we can to birth a new civilization, or to support the one that we've got going into getting on a better track with less war, less violence, and more kindness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to do our work like the two of you. You're doing amazing work, and I really salute both of you and all the listeners out there. Many of our listeners are probably doing amazing work in their own right. So, and I will say, I know we won't be able to stay on this phone too long, but if anybody does want to go to my website, you can look at the mysteries. This is something you can study. I've got 3 books. I send you the introduction to the mysteries for free online. Nice. And, I've got lots of DVDs and all that. I'm going to be in town till Thursday, and then I'll be out of town, but I'll have my assistant actually, sending books and things out. And then I'll be back about the 10th of May. So anyone who's really interested in having deeper conversations about, your own journey of studying, it's a window of time that we all have as souls to accelerate as quickly as we can. Mm-hmm. And that means to clear up issues that no longer serve us emotionally or karmically, and also to have a party of light workers, at the end of this age.
Right.
Yep.
Whatever that looks like.
Well, this again, we could go forever and ever and
I
ever,
know,
we just
that's
barely
the beauty
touched.
of this.
We could barely touch the surface and scratch the surface with you. And you're, like I said, I've seen you've worked a couple of your workshops, and you're so fascinating. And so, people, if you're up in the Bay Area, please go see her at the Conscious Life Expo, but go to newlivingexpo.com. It's in the San Mateo Event Center. You can go to New Living Expo. That's not nude, but NEW livingexpo.com. Marianne Williamson, Tricia McCannon, Laura Eisenhower, Daniel Brinkley.
It's like all the A-listers.
All of them are going to be up there. And then go to Joshua Tree, where Tricia McCannon is going to be speaking to Contact in the Desert, June 3rd through the 6th. Eddie and I are going to be there. We're going to be interviewing some of these amazing speakers. And Tricia, you're going to be talking about, what is it again? Fairies and all kinds of stuff?
I love fairies.
Yeah, I think the 2-hour free talk is extraterrestrials and angels, and that's amazing. And then in the next talk, the workshop, is going to be strange archaeology and giants and fairies, and just a really mind-blowing thing.
Well,
I'm so excited.
Eddie's about to pee his pants just because he's so
love
excited
this
about
stuff.
that. We love you, and we thank you so much for being on Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And for those people out there that tuned in halfway through, please go and listen to this podcast. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, and then you can watch the video on our website at truthbetoldwebtv.com, or go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would love to have you. We have, I think, 4,300 subscribers now. We appreciate every single one, and you guys have been leaving some amazing comments about our wonderful guest that we have on the show. And we want to thank Tricia McCannon. Thank you so much for being here.
And be sure, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, God bless everyone.
God bless
You
you.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And for those people that want to leave us any comments or tell us who you'd love to have on the show, Eddie and I would love to hear from you.
I know. We're always looking for new people who are as passionate as Tricia is and as passionate as Graham was in the earlier show.
Right.
We're really lucky. We have a lot of really high-frequency people.
Oh, definitely. And, of course, we have Eddie Connor, who is amazing. I'm just here to push a button once in a while.
He push your button, Bunky.
I push Eddie's buttons a lot. But thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. And again, we want to thank you and see you next week. Remember, we can go to and check out the upcoming guest. And Eddie's going to be gone for a couple weeks in May. He's going to Peru.
Hey.
I'm going to miss Eddie.
You know,
go ahead.
Wait, my guides are saying in the famous songs of that boy band, bye, bye, bye.
Okay, I'm going out of here. For that, and I'm leaving. All right, talk to you soon.
Bye. Y'all.